Hello, welcome to Module 3. Today we'll be discussing comics and graphic narratives. We will look into the discourse of comics, its emergence from coming from cartoon and caricature, and then we'll be discussing graphic narratives and novels. What is the difference and why is it called graphic narratives and not why graphic novels? Now, bringing in the prehistory of the comics in India, John Lent identifies the root of Indian comics in the caricatures of the temple sculpture. So basically, he's talking about finding the roots in four places or four phases. First, which is the caricature aspects found in the temple. Second, he says in the satires of 19th century Kalighat paintings. Third, he says visual narratives of Patachitra. And fourth, in the 16th century illustrated Dastane Hamir Amza's manuscripts. So these are the four places to locate where the prehistoric comics could be looked from. Then we see two other people, Vidyun Shambane and Shohi Emura, doing some sort of archival research, and in that research they find out that it can be again located into Rajasthani kawards and shadow puppets of Karnataka, Bengali painted Pata scrolls. So these are again other instances where they could locate, and this adds to the prehistory of comics in India as well. Now, though it was discovered later in later times, but again, if we talk about how old the Rajasthani kawards are, we can still locate that it belongs to the prehistoric times. One of the most commonly successful publications was family-owned monthly children's magazine called Chanda Mama, which was founded by Reddy and Chakrapani, and it came just around the time of independence, that is 1947. So this is how we are locating the prehistory of Indian comics. Now, another very significant person without whom the history of Indian comics will be like sort of incomplete is Anand Pai. So Anand Pai is the guy who started Amar Chitrakatha, and it goes back to the time when he was working for Times of India Group, and he worked together on Indrajal comics at that time before starting Amar Chitrakatha, and it was focused on children, started in 1964. But Pai left after some time, almost after 3 years, and then he pushed for or tried to, because he moved on, citing that these comics were lately becoming too educational and therefore he did not like it. Before departing, he'd managed to persuade the Times of India Group that Lee Fawkes' Phantom was better than Superman, and therefore he moves out of Times of India. Later we see that the Indrajal's manager, which is A.C. Shukla, worked with Abid Surti and others, including Govind Brahmania, to create India's first indigenous superhero, which was called Bahadur. And Bahadur was a detective, adventure detective, and he used to wear an orange tunic with multiple languages and diversity of characters in that particular comic. And Indrajal towards the 1980s became very famous. Now, the inception of Amar Chitrakatha and how Anand Pai came up with the concept of Amar Chitrakatha. So, it is a story where where Anand Pai is in Delhi and he's in a book exhibition, and in that book exhibition, quiz show is going on, and in that quiz show he just passes and just listens that the students are unable to answer a question related to the Indian mythology, and then it saddens him questions from mythology, and that was his inspiration to start Amar Chitrakatha. After his time in Amar Chitrakatha, after Pai's time in Times of Group, he again went back to them with his idea of Amar Chitrakatha, but it did not work. Finally, he sold them to India Book House in 1967. So now we see Amar Chitra Katha starting in the year 1967, and he established this series. Initially, the first 10 issues were not what Amar Chitra Katha later looked like. It was initially based on Western fairy tales and published in Kannada. Now, only in the 11th episode, we see that what Pai really wanted Amar Chitra Katha to be gets established. So, in the 11th episode, when he shifts to English, we see the characteristics of mythological and educational approach both coming together. What began with sales of 20,000 issues, in 3 years following this, the Krishna episode that came soon exploded into 5 million per year. That's a huge number. And due to this tremendous success with the launch, which happened in 1967, it boasts a print run of 80 million copies in 38 Indian languages with 400 titles. So this is immense what Amar Chitra Katha did. While approving scripts for Amar Chitra Katha, it has come to notice that Pai remained acutely conscious of multiple textual and oral narratives in Hindi texts that make it difficult to claim one correct rendering. Now, what happens when he's taking episodes from these mythologies like Ramayana and Mahabharata and other Puranas? There are several versions of these Ramayanas, Mahabharatas and Puranas. Now, the question is that who decides or who gets to decide which is the correct version or which version to be used. So, it was indeed a challenge, but Pai admits to his own role in deciding the version he left best suited for his comics. So, in a way we see this landed him in a lot of criticism. Though Amar Chitra Katha is one of the famous comic children books, as it is called, but it had its fair share of criticism as well, which we will discuss. Now, 2 years after Kalpana Chawla's death, Amar Chitra Katha came up with an episode where where Kalpana Chawla was in the same frame as the other historical great people such as Gandhi, Vivekanand, and she was placed amongst these people. So, it kind of brings in this extending the cultural paradigm to the contemporary, the old and the new, the fusion in a way. Now, what happened with Amar Chitra Katha is there were many tales, but we'll discuss a few which received a lot of what we call as, criticism. Now, many of the stereotypes were propagated by Amar Chitra Katha to inform the popular imagination, whosoever is reading the books. If it is children, it is again, it could be equated to Disney's pedagogy of how it started with children, right? So, Buddhism was politically co-opted in the mainfold of majoritarian religions narrative. So, this majoritarian religion narrative kind of included Buddhism also in its manifold in Amar Chitra Katha. Now, Buddhism and Ambedkar's reactionary politics were mellowed down, and this is a deliberate attempt where he's trying to mellow down the reactionary politics of Buddhism and Ambedkar in order to accommodate it in the or make the majoritarian narrative seem happy. So, to please the majoritarian narrative, he is doing so, for which again he received a lot of criticism. Since its debut in 1967, Amar Chitra Katha has been reinforcing many of the problematic tenets of Indian society by trying to together to push forward masculinity, fair screen dominance and high caste and also Hinduism at the same time. Now, this brings us to the particular episodes or the issues which were actually which makes these statement to come true. So, there is basically he was talking about untouchability, where the people who are reading Amar Chitrakatha are facing two kinds of battles. One is colonialism, which as it is brought in here, and the other is caste system. And we also see that in one of the instances, while discussing the Hindus and the Muslims, it does not call out the upper class Hindus as he calls out Muslims for the Parda system. So, this is again very interesting, where he has left out one particular religion but has called out the other religion for similar kind of tropes. And there is another episode of Padmini where she performs Johar or Sati, and in this event it is a powerful image evoking women's bodies as a side of nationalist tropes. Now, he is using the body of women as nationalist tropes, and it is also reductionist portrayal of women couched in culture and tradition. Now, you ask women, what do you want, whether you want to kill yourself or you want to live. Obvious answer would be, depending on the circumstance, as he is trying to bring in the meaning, that they committed Johar to save their virtue. Now, he is glorifying this event, putting the gun in the shoulders of the woman who performed Johar. Glorification of Johar in Amar Chitrakatha is quite disturbing, forced in the nationalist imagination. So, he is trying to push this in the nationalistic imagination, making the woman's body as a nationalist trope and further glorifying Johar. Another episode is of Jhansi of Rani. Now, in a way, women are either hypersexual or silent, meek, like Sati, and are embodiments of virtue. So, the women are seen in two types: one who is very docile, meek, shy, and the other category is hypersexualized. So, Jhansi of Rani in Amar Chitrakatha, she only became a warrior post her husband's demise, clenched in domesticity. So, how domestic it could be made while talking about a warrior as Rani Lakshmi Bai. Next, we have Baba Sahib Ambedkar episode, where he shows him as a pedagogic authority, and he has kind of not included his contribution to the Dalit community, for the people that he contributed. And it has been critiqued, and also allegations that he promoted Hindutva ideology, annihilated other religions. So, he used photographic images, and critics say that photographic images last long, used it to sow the seeds of religion. So, if you look at a photograph, it remains for a longer time in your memory. So, he used to promote it through these photographic images. Another episode on Dayanand Saraswati, though he focused largely on the good that Dayanand Saraswati did, which was contributing to the Arya Samaj and contribution of education, but he forgot to mention about that Dayanand Saraswati believed in the Varna system, again very casteist in nature. And another episode in Rani Padmini, where he talked about Johar, we also see that Pai himself says about Padmini that a lesser woman would not have been able to face Alauddin Khilji. So, what does he mean by a lesser woman? He's in a way questioning the whole integrity of women, how they are perceived. And Amar Chitrakatha also largely talks about the larger nationalistic partition narrative in India, where Muslim rulers have always raped women, showed deceit and debauchery. So, this is how he has represented the Muslim rulers in India. But Bhutalia contests and says Hindu men's tolerance led to the fight or plight of being incapable of protecting their women. So, again coming back to the discussion on Padmini, Bhutalia has made this comment that it is the problem with the Hindu men who could not contain the problem, and the price the women had to pay. They failed to protect their women. Now, with this we come to the golden age of mini comics revolution that happened in India, and it started in the late 70s, moved through 80s, and witnessed a shift from Amar Chitrakatha's national readership to diverse regional ones. So, now we see the coming of regional comics also into play. We see that comic publishing mainly moved from liberal Mumbai to conservative Delhi, where we see the rise of Diamond, Raj and Manoj Comics, the very prominent ones, which also had their subsidiary in pulp. Diamond Comics entered the world of comics in 1978, almost after 10 years of Amar Chitrakatha, a subsidiary of Hindi pulp publisher Diamond Pocket Books, and has continued till today. This is one of the comics which still has sustained. Next, we have very prominent what we know as Chacha Chaudhary and Sabu, and these famous comics were brought in by Pran Kumar Sharma. The publications was created and known as Pran's Features, and he began initially as a newspaper and magazine cartoonist in the 1960s, but later on moved to what they call a satirical Chacha Chaudhary series about a relatable grandfather, and everyone in the audience, in the readers, amongst the readers, could associate with Chacha Chaudhary, be it kids and even to older people. Now, Diamond also published action adventure stories and films. Chitrakatha was one of them, later moving into Western prints as well. So, there was a time in India where Western comics were cheaper, and therefore many comics industries or many comic publication houses also invested in Western reprints. Then came India Book House Monthly Tinkle magazine, and it was very famous among kids. And in 1980, with memorable characters such as Ram Varikar's Supandi. Now, Supandi, this boy, his face is a very animated kind of a character, somewhat resembles a little bit like Popeye, and this again became very famous. Now we have the action comics or action superheroes in India, a time when many of the leading comics came up with new superheroes as well. Now, in the year 1986, three brothers, the Gupta brothers as they are famously called, Sanjay, Manish and Manoj, came together to form Delhi Raj Comics, a pulp publisher of Raja Pocket Books. Influenced by Marvel and DC, they brought in a new Indian superhero called Nagraj, and who used snakes as much as Spider-Man used webs. So, the secret to Nagraj was snakes, just like in comparison to Spider-Man, he has webs. Raj remains a powerful publisher even today, and as such, publishers fueled the 1980s golden age of comics through the broad explosion of mini comics. So, in the genre of mini comics, we see these superheroes also making an entry. Then we have very important superhero in the genre of what we call Hindi adventure comics. So, in the while the Hindi adventure comics made its entry, we see another set of more superheroes making their entry. By 1990, national comic industries or the readership was becoming unsustainable, and leading publishers such as Amar Chitrakatha to cease regular publication and Indradjal to close. So by the 1990s, we see that Indradjal has closed. Amar Chitra Katha somehow relatively surviving, but again not with regular publications. Then something important in the country happened. The Smiling Buddha detonation between India and Pakistan, which gave birth to characters like Parmanu. And Parmanu was a superhero whose identity was a dual identity. So in the daytime, as a normal ordinary human being, he was a police officer called Vinay, and in the night, to fight evil, he transformed himself as Parmanu. Then we have the Raj comics and the superheroes coming from this. One first is Brahman Rakshak, as the name suggests, protector of the universe. Second, we have Parmanu, and next we have the super commando Dhruva or Dhruv, as it is called. They all had a very good lifetime, but as compared to Dhruv, the other two were not as famous as Dhruv. Then again with these three, we have Nagraj. We already mentioned he was a muscular snake. He had a muscular snake-like physique. Another one, we have Tiranga, flag-toting, sharp-minded detective. Next, we have Doga, dog-masked anti-hero, conceived as Mumbai's savior. So just like Spider-Man, who is the savior of the city, so is Doga. The cyborg super cop, Inspector Steel, and next we have superheroine Shakti. So in this list of superheroes, we just have one superheroine, that is Shakti, and she is a nurse by the day, and she turns into a wild-haired, powerful Shakti in night to save women. Now, as the name suggests, Shakti, which is also one of the seen associations with Shiva, she dresses in cheetah print dress, very symbolic. If people have seen the image of Shiva, he also wears cheetah prints, and same is Shakti. So the relevance of the name, the symbolism is what we can find here. Also, it talks about religious symbolisms because of Shakti, which is power, which is also what Shiva means. And then we move on to gendering Hindi adventure comics, symbiotic masculinity. How the idea of masculinity has been developed, redefined, or brought into the popular imagination through these characters or through these superheroes. Now, the evolution of Indian superhero comics from the late 1980s to early 2000s, coming from Nagraj, reflects broader socio-political shifts, particularly in the context of masculine nationalism, Hindu civilization narratives, and we see characters like Dhruv, Doga and Nagraj who exemplify these changes. Now, we will be dealing with each particular character, and we'll try to situate this symbiotic masculinity in their characters as they have been represented, also bringing into the national narrative as well. Now, initially when Dhruv comics came, he's the super commando. He has been shown as relatively very flat and a very docile kind of a character. But after few episodes, it's seen the transformation. Now, this transformation into a moody, angst-ridden character with a muscular physique in later comics like Codename Comet. So, this is happening in 2013. Started to happen in 2013, and we also see that his physique, which we just talked about, is very masculine in nature. It parallels India's aspiration for national and regional supremacy, symbolized by Dhruv's depiction as millennial masculine figure. So again, coming back to the discourse on masculinity, we see this particular superhero, the changes in his masculinity is observed during 13-14. So, we see the development around or the power politics changing around that time of 2013-14, right. So, it also in a way represents that the change which is observed. Initially, Dhruv was not as masculine as he is now, and also bringing into the national narrative, it was not somewhat like that, but later on we see this happening, and it symbolizes his depiction as a millennial masculine figure. Now, what is the difference between a like a patriotic masculine figure or a prehistoric masculine figure as compared to millennial masculine figure? This imagery aligns with the rise of the new popular India or powerful India, reflecting the country's emergence as a global power in the post-liberalization era. Now, when we talk about millennials, they have been perceived in ways very different as compared to the earlier generations, and therefore, the Dhruv is a representation of the millennial masculinity, where he is being represented with the state, like getting integrated into the nation state discourse. And we also see the imagery is aligning with the powerful India. He is becoming powerful, so his journey is that of India's journey as well, from being meek and docile to becoming a powerful nation, and his emergence as relatively to the to being more national, coming in as a global player in this era of post liberalization. Now, Dhruv has is also again situated in the heteronormativity, where his love life is often shown as having women around him. But again, what is more important for Dhruv is the security of the nation, somewhat like that, the portrayal of him. So, there are three females always surrounding Dhruv. One is her sister, who is also a superheroine, Chandika, who is introduced later in the series. And then we have another old friend. This friend is called Richa. She is like the black cat. And the third is Natasha, and Natasha is the girlfriend. So, mostly he has to rescue Natasha, and in other adventures, her sister Chandika and Richa, her friend, his friend, joins him in these rescue missions and adventures at the same time. Now, next we have Doga, who is a dog, who has a dog mask and also very masculine, in fact, he is hyper masculine as compared to Dhruv, the commander. Now, he is 6 foot 5 inch his frame is, and he has a very intimidating appearance, embodies hyper masculinity and physical prowess, and also portrayal as a muscular vigilante, often depicted working out in the gym with his friend Suraj. So, both of them, they are often seen in the gymnasium doing workouts. It reflects the societal emphasis on physical strength and national security. So, his working out is seen as somewhat with the physical strength of the society. So, physical strength of the nation also. So, in nation building, strength is required. That is what Doga is building, and it is also very important for the national security. His metallic sheen of his skin suggests a fusion of human and technological elements, symbolizing India's technological advancement and military strength. So, the way he looks, very muscular, like all the muscles in his body are protruding, and we also see his body looks somewhat like very metallic finish, which is a fusion of what they call as technological elements and human. And it also symbolizes the nation, because our nation is seen to be now developing and also making a lot of technological advancements. And our military is also one of the top 5 militaries in the whole world. So this is how Doga is representing nation, but again with a portrayal of the anti-hero kind of image that he has. Now in one of the episodes we see that it is called Ravan Doga, and Doga has another 9 heads and he is walking past. He looks more realistic. I mean, the characteristics that he has of this anti-hero person who has both kind of both good and evil inside is more realistic. Someone who is not, the definition of perfect is imperfect. A person cannot be perfect, so that person will have all with limitations. He will be bad and good, evil at the same time. So therefore Doga is seen to be more realistic in nature with his anti hero image. Next we have Nagraj, and Nagraj, known for his association with snakes and mystical powers. Uh, we already discussed how Nagraj is more like what we call as compared to Spider-Man, because he has webs and he has snakes, represents a more egalitarian approach within the superhero pantheon. So he is one who is more of this egalitarian approach as compared to Doga or Dhruv or other superheroes. His female allies are two, who one is called Saudangi and the other is called Visarpi. So both of them are also, as the name suggests, so dung, which comes from again snake, because snake hisses, and that is in Hindi called dung. So Saudangi coming from there, and then Visarpi, Sarp again is another name for snake in Hindi. So Visharpi and Vish also. So if you the Vish is the venom. So Visharpi and Saudangi, so both of them play significant role in his adventures. Now again, when these two are brought into place along with Shakti and Chandika, we have 4 in a way we can see them as superheroines, but they are again secondary to the stereotyped superhero male. And we also see challenges traditional gender roles, as Saudangi, a shape-shifting Egyptian cobra. So Saudangi is a shape-shifting cobra, whereas Visarpi, a former empress of Nagadweep. Again, the name Nagadweep, Nag is snake and Dweep is island. So she is the empress of the island of snakes. It demonstrates the complexity and diversity of female characters within the comics. So apart from Shakti and Chandika, we see these two, which in a way demonstrates the complexity and diversity of female characters within the comics.